Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam declared a boycott against South Korean cultural exports. Yet South Korea's tourism numbers did not even notice. What happens when an entire region's collective outrage fails to register on the balance sheet of the country selling them culture? When consumers across 4 nations organize to stop buying, you would expect corporate boardrooms in Seoul to panic. Instead, foreign card spending in South Korea soared to record highs. The gap between outrage on social media feeds and reality on economic ledgers reveals who actually holds the leverage in modern soft power. So how did a consumer movement across 4 Southeast Asian nations make zero visible dent in South Korea's bottom line? It starts at 9 o'clock on the night of January 31st, inside Kuala Lumpur's Axiata Arena. A single security confrontation there set off a regional firestorm. Act 1, the camera that started a war. Inside Axiata Arena, security staff began escorting a South Korean fan photographer toward the exit. The South Korean pop group Day 6 was on stage celebrating 10 years together, but the tension in the arena had nothing to do with the music. It was about a professional-grade camera, smuggled past a clearly posted ban, aimed over the heads of paying fans who could no longer see the stage. A Malaysian concert-goer filmed the confrontation and posted the video online. Within days, that single clip escalated into a full-scale cultural dispute between Southeast Asia and South Korea. What unfolded at Axiata Arena was not a debate over performance quality or ticket prices. The issue was an entitlement that local concert-goers decided they were no longer willing to tolerate. When fan photographers bring professional camera gear into restricted venues, they block the sidelines of fans who paid substantial money for their seats. When local security enforced venue rules, online commentators in South Korea did not side with venue management or local fans. They defended the photographer, framing rule enforcement as poor hospitality. That reaction shifted the argument from venue rules to regional respect. Once the video hit social feeds, it spread far beyond the Malaysian music community. Users across Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand recognized a familiar dynamic. For 2 decades, Southeast Asian consumers have bought concert tickets, streamed tracks, and supported Korean cultural exports at scale. Yet online discourse frequently treated those same fans as passive consumers rather than essential commercial partners. The clip became a focal point for long-standing frustrations over how Seoul's online culture sees Southeast Asian audiences. By February, the original argument over concert camera etiquette had completely vanished. What replaced it was a much uglier cross-border confrontation that brought underlying economic tensions to the surface. The initial spark was a banned camera at a concert venue. The fire became a coordinated cultural boycott across multiple nations, and the central question shifted entirely. In a globalized soft power economy, who actually holds the ultimate leverage, the producer or the consumer? Act 2, a hashtag built for solidarity, repurposed for war. The banner under which Southeast Asian users united was not created for an online fight with K-pop fans. The hashtag SEAblings, a portmanteau of Southeast Asia and siblings, originally emerged from a genuine crisis thousands of kilometers away from any concert stage. To understand how this online identity developed the strength to coordinate regional action, we have to look back to Jakarta in August 2025. On August 28th, 2025, a 21-year-old Jakarta motorcycle taxi driver named Irfan Kurniawan was killed by a police vehicle during local protests. When news spread online, a Thai social media user realized that cross-border food delivery apps like Grab and Gojek let users place orders from anywhere. Within hours, everyday users across Malaysia, Singapore, the Philippines, and Thailand were ordering meals for striking delivery drivers and strangers in Jakarta, paying for food from 1,000 kilometers away. Commentators initially compared the movement to the Milk Tea Alliance, which connected pro-democracy youth across Thailand, Hong Kong, and Taiwan using political slogans. But SEAblings was distinct because its solidarity arrived as practical support, food, and direct digital payments rather than political ideology. The gesture created a durable network of cross-border digital cooperation. When the concert dispute broke out 6 months later, that existing network was immediately repurposed. That same regional digital audience is the financial engine that South Korea's cultural export industry quietly relies upon. Korean cultural exports, spanning music, television, film, and video games, generated over $10.3 billion in export value through the third quarter of 2025 alone. That performance placed cultural content as South Korea's 4th largest national export category, sitting right behind semiconductors, automobiles, and petrochemicals. And the numbers show exactly how critical Southeast Asia is to those trade figures. Industry metrics rank Indonesia as the single largest K-pop market globally by streaming volume. Southeast Asian audiences did not merely observe the Korean wave from the sidelines. They funded a massive share of its growth, one streaming subscription, physical album purchase, and concert ticket at a time. Act 3. Turning feelings into a boycott. When the online argument expanded beyond the initial concert video, the tone turned aggressive. What began as an exchange about venue rules transformed into an economic campaign designed to hit South Korean corporations directly in their balance sheets. Korean commentators began posting derogatory remarks targeting Southeast Asian users' appearance, skin tone, and regional living standards. One post comparing Southeast Asian women to orangutans reached an estimated 83 million views. When SEAblings users highlighted local Southeast Asian pop talent, such as the Indonesian girl group Nona, Korean accounts mocked a music video filmed in rice paddies as evidence of a shoestring budget. That jab at rural life insulted landscapes that millions of Southeast Asians call home. Korean accounts dared Southeast Asian fans to champion their local artists instead, framing past support for K-pop as a favor granted rather than a commercial transaction. SEAblings accounts retaliated by targeting South Korea's well-documented hyper-competitive social pressures and declining demographics. The online exchange degraded rapidly, leaving neither side looking generous. Southeast Asian online communities decided to convert their anger into financial consequences. Call-outs targeted major conglomerates like Samsung in electronics and Olive Young in retail beauty. Fans organized downvoting campaigns against Korean shows on streaming platforms and posted negative reviews for tourist landmarks. Some went further, uploading videos cutting up collectible photo cards or cancelling flights to Seoul and Jeju Island they had already booked. The movement achieved immediate diplomatic visibility. South Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs began actively monitoring Malay and Indonesian language digital discourse, with officials acknowledging potential risks to regional commercial interests. Several prominent Korean content creators published formal public apologies, with one addressing Indonesian viewers directly in Indonesian to calm the backlash. Act 4. Power on the feed. Power on the ledger. Here is where the story gets complicated. Public apologies on social media created the impression that the boycott was succeeding. But when the official economic figures for the first half of the year were released, they showed a completely different reality. Between January and June, the exact peak of the online boycott, South Korea recorded 10.71 million foreign visitors, a 21% increase year-on-year. Foreign credit card spending crossed 10 trillion won, or roughly $6.8 billion, reaching that milestone 3 months faster than in 2025. It was South Korea's best half-year tourism performance on record. Look closely at where those visitors actually came from, and the picture explains why the boycott never moved the national numbers. The 6 Southeast Asian markets most active in the dispute sent 230,000 visitors to South Korea in June alone. Tourist inflows from China, Japan, and Taiwan dwarfed that volume. In fact, outbound travel from the Philippines to South Korea actually grew during the boycott period. For an individual fan in Jakarta or Manila who destroyed personal merchandise or cancelled a long-planned vacation, the personal sacrifice was real. But at a macro level, individual consumer actions disappeared entirely inside broader regional travel trends. Corporate accounting departments and government ministries in Seoul saw only record-breaking revenue figures. Yet measuring the outcome purely through balance sheets misses what actually changed. The boycott forced a foreign ministry to institute formal monitoring of Malay and Indonesian language discourse. It compelled individual creators to issue direct apologies in Indonesian. And it proved that SEAblings is a durable, reusable regional identity capable of organizing action across borders. A consumer movement can fail to dent a national ledger while still changing how a region understands its own collective leverage. Act 5. What the gap actually means. There is a simple version of this narrative that demands a final verdict: either the boycott worked or it failed. But neither binary answer holds up when examined against the data, which points to a structural economic shift occurring across the region. South Korea's cultural export model depends heavily on Southeast Asian consumption volume to build global scale. However, Southeast Asian consumers currently lack the concentrated financial channels required to convert public dissatisfaction into immediate corporate loss. Consumption remains fragmented across millions of individual households, making collective economic pressure difficult to enforce on foreign firms. That dynamic may shift as Southeast Asia's purchasing power expands relative to East Asian markets. Historically, China has been the industry's largest market, but as Southeast Asian economies mature, their financial weight will carry greater systemic impact. This dispute may ultimately be remembered not as an unsuccessful boycott, but as an initial test run for future consumer organization. Right now, 2 parallel realities exist. There is a truth visible in a browser tab, where consumer outrage forces public apologies, that financial analysts in Seoul never have to factor into earnings models. And there is a truth written on economic ledgers that online discourse cannot alter. Which of those forces will ultimately shape regional trade relations remains an open question. I am Hero the Hornbill, and this is the ASEAN Angle. If this episode gave you a new way of seeing the region, subscribe so you do not miss the next one. New episodes weekly, link in the description.